The streetlights flickered in the cool night air, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. The bus stop shelter rattled softly whenever a car sped past. On the bench sat a young woman, her body hunched forward, arms wrapped tightly around a faded backpack that looked almost heavier than she was. Her hair fell in messy strands around her face, hiding the tired lines under her eyes. She stared down at her shoes, scuffed, worn, barely holding together, as though the ground itself might offer her some kind of comfort. She tried to make herself invisible, shrinking into the corner of the bench, but the silence of the night only made her presence feel louder. Her stomach growled, sharp and empty, but she pressed her lips together, ignoring it like she had countless times before. Somewhere in the distance, laughter echoed, reminding her of a world that wasn't hers anymore. Just then, a small pair of shoes tapped against the concrete. She lifted her eyes slightly, startled. A little girl with big brown eyes stood a few feet away, holding a red balloon that bobbed above her head in the breeze. The girl's gaze was steady, curious, innocent. She tilted her head as if studying a puzzle, and with a soft, cheerful voice, she said, "Hi." The young woman blinked, unsure if she had heard right, unsure why this child had chosen her, of all people, to speak to. Her dry lips parted, but no words came, only a fragile, uncertain smile. The little girl plopped down on the bench without hesitation, her legs too short to reach the ground, so they swung back and forth in restless rhythm. The balloon string twisted in her fingers, squeaking softly against the rubber as she stared at the woman with open curiosity. The young woman stiffened, inching her backpack closer as if it were a shield. No one ever sat beside her on purpose. People usually avoided her, their eyes sliding past as though she didn't exist. "Why are you sitting here all alone?" the girl asked, her tone light, like she was asking about the weather. The question pierced deeper than the woman expected. She lowered her gaze to her lap, afraid the child might see too much in her eyes. I don't have a home to go to," she whispered, her voice rough, as though speaking the truth out loud made it heavier. The girl blinked at her, not with pity, but with the kind of seriousness only children could manage when they were trying very hard to understand something big. She hugged her balloon closer to her chest, her brow furrowed. The silence between them stretched. The woman expected the girl to get up, to run back to wherever her parents were. Instead, the child leaned a little closer, studying her face, as though she wasn't afraid of the tangled hair or the torn sweater. "You don't have a home?" she asked again, just to be sure. The young woman shook her head, fighting the sting in her throat. The girl's legs slowed their swinging, her small face tightening as though she had arrived at a very important thought. She hugged the balloon string against her chest, eyes shining with a seriousness that didn't match her age. The young woman shifted uneasily on the bench, pulling her sleeves down over her hands. She wasn't used to being looked at this long, especially not with such focus. Most people glanced at her once and turned away. This child, though, was staring straight through the tangled hair, the worn clothes, the invisible walls she had built around herself. Finally, the little girl leaned closer, lowering her voice to a secretive whisper as though she was sharing something sacred. "You need a home," she paused, her brow furrowed, then added with a quiet certainty, "and I need a mommy." The words struck like a bell in the silence. The young woman's breath hitched, her throat closing before she could speak. Her eyes stung, and she quickly looked away, pressing her sleeve to her face as if hiding would keep the tears from showing. No one had called her anything close to mommy before. No one had needed her. She forced a shaky laugh, trying to brush it off, but the sound came out broken. "Sweetheart, I don't think that's how it works." But the little girl only shrugged, swinging her legs again, as if she had solved a problem far too simple for grown-ups to understand. "Why not? You don't have a home, and I don't have a mommy. We can share." Her tiny hand slipped across the cold metal bench, resting on the woman's sleeve. It was warm, soft, unafraid. The young woman froze, her chest aching as if the child's touch had unlocked something buried deep, loneliness she had carried for years, and a longing she thought she had killed. Her tears spilled freely now, quiet trails down her cheeks, but she couldn't look away from those earnest little eyes. For the first time in years, someone wanted her, not for money, not to take from her, but simply, to be. A voice broke the fragile moment. "Lily." The little girl's head snapped up, her balloon bobbing high as she spotted a tall man striding quickly toward the bus stop. His tie was loosened, his suit jacket slung over one arm, his face flushed with both worry and relief. He looked like someone who had rushed straight from a long day at work, searching desperately for the child now running toward him. "Daddy," she squealed, hopping off the bench and clutching his hand with both of her small ones. "I was just talking to her." She pointed back toward the young woman, who instinctively lowered her gaze and hugged her backpack tighter, wishing she could disappear into the cracked pavement. The man followed his daughter's gesture, his eyes landing on the stranger sitting hunched on the bench. For a brief second, his expression flickered, concern mixed with caution. The young woman dropped her head further, ashamed, bracing herself for the judgment she had seen 1,000 times before.